your boy MVP decided he was going to take a shot at Dave Meltzer, and Meltzer responded. So we're going to talk about that today. And MVP is obviously correct, and Dave Meltzer is obviously just deflecting. But we're going to talk about this. Let's get into what MVP said first.
For you wrestlers, especially you young men and women coming up, your payoff, your star rating is that audience giving you that applause at the end of your match. When you get a pop on the 1, 2, 3, that is your payoff. That's your star rating. The fans will let you know how good your match is. Don't leave it up to some idiot behind the computer saying how good your match was or wasn't. And I'm gonna go off on a rant. Let me reel myself in. I'm still already feeling a little ill. Let me take a quick sip just to kind of.
Okay, so you see, MVP is talking about, hey, the crowd is who you wrestle for. I mean, this is all just basic stuff, right? For years, people have allowed themselves to be manipulated by Dave Meltzer. But it's an important piece because I'm about to play Meltzer's response, and we're gonna listen to his reaction. But I've heard out of the mouths of AEW wrestlers that they're wrestling for good star ratings. When Britt Baker was slicing her head open, she was hoping that they got a good star rating from Dave Meltzer. Sammy Guevara on AEW TV. Where's my stars, Dave? Where's my stars? AEW has made this thing the most important element in mainstream wrestling. Well, one of the most important elements. For years and years, of course, Vince Russo was screaming about ratings, TV ratings. And for a lot of people, that was the marker of whether you were good or not, or whether you had talent or not. It was whether you made the numbers go up. Did you increase viewers? Wrestling matches don't increase viewers, usually. But then Meltzer, because they've been doing this for 40 years, been reviewing wrestling matches, and a lot of people's legacies are tied up in these wrestling matches and the ratings that they get on whether it's Cage Match or the Wrestling Observer newsletter. So when Meltzer tries to dodge this thing, which as we about to play in a second, you could see that he's just trying to downplay his own king-making abilities. He's made people millionaires, by the way.
So MVP was talking today. Our big problem with wrestling is everyone is performing for an audience of one. Now, the audience of one, he said, was me. And it's just like, it was actually funny when I read that, because it's just like, the funniest thing about wrestling is that, and nobody talks about it, and I think some people know it, but most don't, is that, in fact, it's always been an audience of one, and it's absolutely not me, is that person. In AEW, at the end of the day, it's like, he's going like, they don't perform before the fans, they're performing to get star ratings. And it's like, that's obviously ludicrous. But at the end of the day, you're still performing for the audience of one, because the fans will impact Tony Khan, who is the audience of one in AEW, and Paul Levesque, who is the audience of one in WWE. And at the end of the day, that's who you're performing for. In every company, there's one person, and he's the guy who determines your fate. And that's who you have to get over to, because, getting over to the fans helps. Not getting over to the fans hurts. But it's always interpreted by the audience of one, by the guy in charge.
All right. Now, obviously, there is some element of truth to that. And it's not wholly incorrect. Clearly, you have to impress your employer. But your employer is paying you to be there because they think that you can please the crowd. They think that you might be enticing or interesting to the crowd. Tony Khan has brought in wrestlers simply because they have high cage match ratings or high ratings on Wrestling Observer newsletter. There have been people, an entire industry built around people who rate pro wrestling matches. These people are now about to tell you who a Hall of Famer is, believe it or not, because they're about to do the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. So they're going to pick the ones who are the Hall of Famers in wrestling, and this matters more than the WWE Hall of Fame, even though they claim that he claims the audience of one matters, but he's got this panel of experts who can pick the real Hall of Fame. This is a real Hall of Fame. Yeah, right. And you think that they're not looking at your stupid star ratings when they come up with this stuff? You have made people millions of dollars. The Young Bucks would not have been known outside the indies if Meltzer had not continuously talked about them. And look, he's got an incredible amount of power. You can use that power for good. You can use that power for evil. He sometimes uses that power for good. Sometimes he points people in the direction of a wrestling match or a wrestling promotion that doesn't get a lot of attention. And that's a good thing. Most recently, he put over the Kendall Gray versus Callie Armstrong match. He gave it 4 stars. One of the highest rated matches. Pretty much the only match from Evolve he's ever rated. And just by posting that, and it was the only match he rated on the entire show, he got people saying, I'm going to watch that match. I'm going to watch that show. Because he directs people to places and to do things. And if you think that people like Tony Khan are not listening to him, then you're wrong. You're just wrong. So technically, yes, you have to get over with the boss. You got to be on the boss's good side so you can get pushed and all that. Yes, they're the decision makers, absolutely. But you should be performing for the audience. The audience should be the ones picking who had the best match, not Meltzer and all these other assorted dorks behind keyboards. Somebody like me, I can just tell you why I don't like something. Not, giving I don't even give objective number ratings to things. I just say whether I liked it or whether I didn't like it. And I may like something for a different reason than I don't like something else. Like something might not be perfectly fine in terms of a wrestling match, but I just wasn't interested in it. And a lot of wrestling is like that for me. There's nothing wrong with the match. I just don't care. And I'm I'm honest about that. I don't sit here and I don't pour over matches and all that kind of stuff. If I was interested, I may give a little bit more depth to my review of the match. But for most part, I'm looking at story elements and presentation and stuff like that. Meltzer is looking at these matches and trying to grade them like a teacher in class, in a class with an obvious bias, because he has taken matches. I think the most obvious example of this was Sol Ruka versus Kalani Jordan, and he brutalized that match, basically saying that they don't know how to work. They were just doing moves. They was just doing spots. They going from spot to spot. And I'm thinking, like, what's the difference between this and like a Young Bucks match? Or what's the difference between this and like a Will Ospreay match? He doesn't tell you what the difference is. It's just, well, it's not the same. So you're like, okay, so Spot Fest is okay if it's these guys, but not if it's these girls. A Spot Fest is okay if it happens in this company, but not this one. Like these things, they jump out at you as being obviously biased bullshit. And you would think people would ignore it, but they don't. They don't. Because then he turns around and he'll give Tomohiro Ishii versus Jon Moxley 4 stars. And everybody with a functioning brain is saying, like, what about this is 4 stars? Explain yourself. Like, what about this is 4 stars? Whenever he's put on the hot seat about his star ratings, he deflects and basically says it doesn't matter. So, back in January of 2024, Meltzer was, of course, hounded again by his star ratings. And a fan asked him, what's the match you get asked this about the most? Why didn't it get 5 stars? And Meltzer responded, I really don't pay attention to anything related to star ratings. If it's above a 4-star, that means I recommend it's worth watching. If it's above 4.5, I recommend you should watch it if you are voting for match of the year. People who complain about why didn't this match get 5 stars have no conception of what they're talking about. Then why do you have star ratings at all? Why not just recommend, don't recommend? Right? Like, that's the easiest way to do it. It's either a pass or fail. Either the match was or I suggest you watch it. You put star ratings on things for a reason. And then people keep up with these star ratings for a reason. Now, when you apply pressure to him, these things don't matter. When you don't apply pressure to him and you just let him do whatever he wants, he starts saying all kind of stuff, like when he dissed Dominic Mysterio a couple of days ago. How he wasn't as good as all the other people Rusev was asked to put over in AEW. Well, how do you think he came to that conclusion? That he just doesn't recommend enough Dominic Mysterio matches, and he recommends all of these Hangman Page. Why would he recommend so many Hangman Page matches anyway? Like, these are things, man. MVP clocked him, as the black girls say. They clocked that T. But he don't want the responsibility, so he's trying to back off of it. And he does this every single time. When he got called out by Chris Van Vliet for not giving Kurt Angle 5 stars, he backed down.
Name came up recently when I talked to Dave Meltzer, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. According to Dave, you've never had a 5-star match.
No, Dave, I don't know if Dave likes me or not, or what's going on, but you know what? It's his opinion. I will respect that. I do understand. He's very knowledgeable with wrestling. Maybe he just doesn't like my style. I don't know. I would love to have a 5-star match rating, but he just didn't feel that I did. And like I said before, it's his opinion.
Your name came up recently.
So, when asked about the 5-star match and why Kurt Angle has never had a 5-star match, this is what Meltzer said.
I was blown away to learn Kurt Angle's never had a 5-star match.
Yeah, but he's had tons of 4 3/4, which is basically the same thing. It's just like
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, it is. Anything over 4 is great. Yeah, could you say that the Chris Benoit match at Royal Rumble was a 5-star match? I was pretty damn close. I said
Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe in TNA?
I never saw one as a 5-star match. I mean, 5 stars to me is that's like the elite level.
5-star? That's a big benchmark for people.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be, because if you're at 4 3/4, that means I'm thinking that you should be considered for match of the year.
So that's his way of getting out of it when you apply any kind of pressure, right? And nobody should care about Dave Meltzer and what he thinks. This is where I land on it. I've never cared about what Dave Meltzer thought about pro wrestling. The thing is, he is the one who claims that he is an expert in pro wrestling. He has claimed this time and time again, that he is an expert in pro wrestling. For instance, one of his many replies to MVP, because he replied on Twitter as well, he said, the single most obvious thing in wrestling that nobody ever acknowledges, in fact, for wrestlers, it has always been about performing for an audience of one. But no one has either figured out who the one is or had the guts to say it. And for the people who claim it's me, show exactly how little they know about their own business. So what do you mean how little MVP knows about wrestling? What do you mean? He is a wrestler. You are not a wrestler. So again, he continues by saying, I love storytelling. It's the essence of wrestling. I just don't have a narrow brain where everything not done in a certain way is wrong. The highest rated matches are based on storytelling. You've been listening to people who probably don't watch wrestling all over and learn different things that work and why. Also, the wrestlers these days, and more so the future, who will be the best at working their audience, will be those in Mexico, because they do the most matches and will learn the most about working a live crowd. That's why studying them in 2025 is so important. Again, he does this time and time again. He always talks about how he watches more wrestling than you. He's seen more wrestlers than you. He's been watching this much longer than you. He's an expert. And then soon as you put some pressure on him, what I say doesn't matter anyway. Why do you care about what I think? For instance, when he was challenged by a fan, the fan tweeted at him, "That doesn't matter any more than the number of episodes AEW has produced. For 83 weeks straight, WCW accomplished more than AEW ever has or will." He's talking about, the 83 weeks that WCW beat Raw head to head in the ratings. Meltzer says, quote, "Not financially," meaning not financially they accomplished more, "not from a wrestling is performance art standpoint. Look at the cage match top 300 bouts of all time. How many were from AEW versus how many was from WCW? But you just said, and you continuously say, that your ratings and the ratings and rating matches doesn't matter. Do they matter or do they not matter? They matter when you want to debate something. And then obviously this is what makes you rating certain matches from certain people much, much higher a point of debate. Because when someone says, when it comes to pop culture and popularity, AEW is nowhere near WCW, you say, well, they got higher rated matches. By whose standards? You and the same 200 people? This is what I'm talking about here. You know what I'm saying? This stuff is bizarre. You can't hold this guy to any sort of, he's such a fucking worm. I mean, when he was rating the matches in New Japan, he was giving all these Kenny Omega matches and Nakamura, all these guys 4 stars, 5 stars every time they stepped out of the curtain. That led to bigger business for New Japan because it pushed all the observer readers to watch New Japan. He did the same thing with Ring of Honor. He did a little bit to TNA. It didn't really work that well when it came to TNA. And he did a whole lot to AEW. He's been shoving tons of stars and tons of star ratings in their direction. This has been his version of marketing for a really long time. And I say again, it should not matter. But he's not consistent with it not mattering. He should just say, look, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. But instead of doing that, whenever you say this show sucks, he'll say, oh, well, look at the star ratings, look at cage match ratings, etc., etc. Come on, man. You clearly are rating these matches based off of some expertise or some standard because you think you're some kind of kingmaker. So when somebody like MVP calls you out on it, don't then say, well, I'm not the guy. You got to impress your boss. Okay, your boss is obviously one of the people you have to impress. And also, don't get me wrong. I do notice and did notice that when Vince was in the chair and people were saying, oh, it's a show for an audience of one, and it's only Vince. All you got to do is impress Vince because he's not over with the rest of us. That was a bad thing, right? When they were talking like Roman Reigns, he's only over with Vince and nobody else likes him. Then he did the right thing then, I guess, because he was over with the person that matters. But that kind of mentality is negative when you want it to be negative. It's positive when you want it to be positive. Again, there's no consistency here. Obviously the audience has to be impressed with you. And if your boss listens to the audience and you sell merchandise and stuff like that, then you consistently get pushed and you should consistently go forward. But this is also why I don't believe in rating matches. I don't want to have a rubric and sit down and check off boxes to tell you like what makes a great match. I just say simple. Make me believe that what's happening is legitimate and give me something that leads me to believe that anybody can win. And if I care about it, that's all I really care about, really. If you do ridiculous moves, I'm going to note that they're ridiculous moves and they took me out of the match. Other than that, I don't really care. I really don't care if people don't like my style of the kind of stuff that I like. I kind of like goofy wrestling anyway. You know, my favorite shit is like mid-90s WWF and 80s WWF. I'm not one of these guys who's going to force you to eat your broccoli and watch 30-minute guys in New Japan or anything like that. Watch something fun that you enjoy. You know, like that's pretty much what it should be. That's how this business should work. Watch things that you enjoy. And to close things out, Meltzer is he's such an egotist that when somebody called him a fraud on the internet, he says decades of awards and multiple halls of fame. Anyway, last sentence is the opinion of the best sports writer of the last 60 years who also read the newsletter for 2 decades. Basically, Frank DeFord gave him credit for writing good articles. One guy, and now all of a sudden Meltzer has been waving this in your face ever since. Ever since. Okay? He was called the best sports reporter in the country by Frank DeFord. And he's got this thing on the clipboard to throw in your face soon as you challenge him. But oh no, the star ratings don't matter. Come on, man. This is the only reason they keep coming up. Because anytime you try to call him a fraud or say that what he believes is bullshit, he tries to back his argument with his bona fides. Frank DeFord loves me. Look at all these people who read the Observer. Okay, so now we're going to take what you say seriously. Oh no. Just focus on what your boss. When the wrestlers come after him, all of a sudden, no. When it's a fan that's coming after him, it's shut up, Frank DeFord loves me. When it's somebody else in the business, it's you should probably focus on what your boss thinks. Come on, you corny. It's corny. It's ridiculous. We gonna keep our boot on his neck though. We gonna keep doing this. Every time somebody calls him out, we gonna talk about it. Because usually it's a good point to be had. Best sports writer in the country, apparently. That's what he claimed. So. But it's just his opinion. Just the opinion of the best sports writer in the country. Who has been writing pro articles for a specific company trying to boost their business. But oh no, you're performing for an audience of 1. Oh no, not me. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for your time. I'll talk to you guys later.